Before we start the video, please don't be a Baka and subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell. I will assure you your little effort will help me a lot. Now back to the video. After a while, he turns to Jae-won, asking him to explain in detail whatever happened after he came to chaos. In response to Yurin's request to know about what happened to him, Jae-won reveals that he got caught up in something and entered chaos by chance. He got the spirit stones from the Emerald Bug clan by chance and entered the fortress. After that, he got caught up in the incident by chance, met the divine physician, and learned about the dead only after seeing it once. Hearing all of it, Urun states that it is alright, considering that he believes such words. Shangdao asks if he really thinks of them as true, and Urun disagrees, leading him to remark that he has gone insane. In response, Urun states that in order to gain someone else's trust, he first needs to trust that person. He then turns to Jae-won again, stating that he wants to ask him a few more questions, and Jae-won agrees to answer. After a small pause, Urun asks if the body he possesses is a living one. Hearing that, Jae-won feels surprised and looks up, remembering that he refused to join the main game and came out of the tower by destroying it. He was mistaken for a dead person by the illusion tree and sent to chaos, while his physical body might still be on Earth. Remembering all that, Jae-won turns to Urun and asks how he came to know about it. In response, Urun repeats Jae-won's claim that he got caught up in something and entered chaos by chance and states that no one would describe their own death as he did. He then asks if Jae-won does not want to reveal his identity because of some kind of threat, and Jae-won disagrees. Urun considers this to be the reason for his troubles during the identification process, making Jae-won remember whatever happened that day. Urun states that Jae-won is the protagonist who is being chased by some kind of large power that has followed him to chaos. Hearing that, Jae-won becomes surprised and thinks that although he is not sure of it, it must be the person known as the Monarch of Pitch Darkness. He wonders how strong these monarchs are. Meanwhile, Urun continues to state that he will not ask about his identity or compensate for the damages he has caused. Instead, they will provide him protection. Hearing that, Jae-won asks if the Gorgon fortress is strong enough to go up against the 12 monarchs of the Almighty Land. Hearing about the 12 monarchs, Urun asks if the 12 monarchs are the ones chasing after him, and he agrees, stating that it might be one of them. In response, Urun remarks that it is great, stating that the monarchs would become unable to interfere in the matters that occur within chaos. Hearing that, Jae-won asks what they want from him in return, and Urun states that they only want him to do one favor, which is to save the fortress master. 2 hours later, while going down the stairs to a basement, the person leading Jae-won and Chunjio told them that Carlton and Mino are recovering in the treatment center. Turning to them, the person asks if they really want her to bring them to the training ground instead of the VIP room. Just then, Chunjio speaks up, stating that they should decide which one is superior among his and Jae-won's thrust. Turning to Jae-won, Shangdao remarks that he has also cleared the Tower of Masters, making him surprised. Turning to Chung-hyo, Jae-won asks if he knows anything about that, and he agrees. While they finally stop in front of a room, standing there, Chunjio states that if Jae-won wins against him, he will answer as many questions as he wants. However, he considers it impossible for Jae-won to win against him. After a lot of time passes, Jae-won stands in scathe while Chunjio, who crashed into a hole made in the floor, states that they will start the match again. Looking at the entire corridor about to collapse due to Chunjio crashing into the roof, walls, and ground countless times, Jae-won states that the match has already been decided. In response, Chunjio states that he still has not used his ultimate technique, and if he uses it, Jae-won will die, making Jae-won feel bored after hearing the same thing repeatedly. Calling him insolent, Shangdao asks how old he is, and he reveals his age to be 60. In response, Chunjio states that he is 1,000 years old, and the 60 years of thrusting that Jae-won has done would never have a chance against his 1,000 years of slashing. Hearing that, Jae-won asks if he really slashed for 1,000 years, and Chunjio agrees, causing Jae-won to remark that his slashing looks like he has only had 10 years of practice. This enrages Chunjio, who jumps up from the hole, holding his sword, and states that this hit from him will change Jae-won's perspective. After that, he imbues his sword with powerful energy and charges at Jae-won, who, in response, takes out his sword as well, and an intense battle finally starts between the two. As their swords collide with each other, a powerful wave of energy is generated that surrounds them as they continue the relentless fight. In the middle of the fight, Chunjio strikes Jaehwan with such force that he is pushed backward. Considering that he was pushed this far back even after using the normal stab, Jaehwan feels shocked. Meanwhile, Chunjio remarks that his technique was very useful and asks what it was called. In response, Jaehwan reveals it to be the normal stab, causing him to remark that it is a condescending name for such a remarkable technique. Chunjio states that this name makes one feel like there is an even stronger technique as compared to this one. In response, Jaehwan holds his sword tightly and reveals that there is indeed a much stronger technique as compared to that. Hearing that, Chunjio feels shocked and asks what that is. When he sees Jaehwan charging at him with an aura resembling that of the Soul King of Chaos, remembering the power and the fear of facing him, Chunjio starts to feel anxious. He thinks that Jaehwan is making him remember the king and wonders if he can even slash him. He thinks that such a powerful attack might destroy the entire castle of Gorgon. Just then, Jaehwan states that he is coming to attack. However, considering the destruction it can spread, Chunjio tells him to stop, stating that he has accepted his defeat. Meanwhile, in the fifth region of the Great Land, the Steel region, a person stands, ordering his subordinate to tell him about the details of the Pitch Black Monarch's actions. In response, the subordinate reveals that the Pitch Black Monarch is currently in contact with chaos. The person, who turns out to be Helio, the Steel Monarch, asks why they are doing it. He states that all of the monarchs of the Great Land should be part of the pact that prevents them from interfering with matters of chaos. In response, his subordinate states that it is a bit complicated and requests that he look at the screen. Showing Jaehwan looking at Jaehwan's video, Helio states that it is the one that has been circulating a lot and asks how it is related to that, while remarking that it is said to be fake. In response, his subordinate reveals that this person is the product that the Pitch Black Monarch was going to contract, making him shocked. After contemplating a little, Helio asks if the ninth region of the Almighty Land really has connections with chaos. The subordinate of Greece, stating that they recently covered this, reveals that the Pitch Black Monarch has been interfering with chaos for a long time, and some of the sects there have been in regular communication with the Pitch Black Monarch. Wondering what the Pitch Black Monarch is up to, Helio tells his subordinate to send a notice so that he can travel to chaos, prompting her to ask if he is planning on interfering with chaos. In response, Helio states that he is only planning to watch so that he can understand the situation and tells her to send 10 elite gold 1 rank warriors and Hayoung. She complies. After she leaves, Helio wonders how Chunjio is doing, thinking that he would have lived a long time if he did not have such a hot-headed personality. Meanwhile, in the Gorgon castle, Chunjio tells Jaehwan to stop and clings to his sword, stating that he cannot let him do this, while Jaehwan tells him to get down, stating that he understands. Getting down from the sword, Chunjio remarks that it is impossible and asks how he is able to do something this powerful after just stabbing a few times over 40 years. In response, Jaehwan reveals that he practiced stabbing about 10 billion times, causing Chunjio to ask if he stabbed 8 times a second without a break. Jaehwan states that he can stab up to 100 times a second. Sitting down near Chunjio, Jaehwan asks why he thinks that stabbing is only possible with the sword and brings his hand forward, causing shiny particles to emerge from it. Seeing that, Chunjio wonders if it is the sharp and foreign energy that he has felt since he first saw Jaehwan. Looking at the particles surrounding Jaehwan, he realizes that it is not energy or something like a fighting spirit but rather his hostility and intent to refine the world. Meanwhile, the shiny particles transform into small spikes emerging from his body that pierce through Chunjio's fingers. Jaehwan states that this is what he calls stabbing, considering it to be unbelievable. Chunjio remarks that he has become stabbing himself and is repeatedly stabbing the world even at this very moment. In response, Jaehwan repeats his claim to have practiced it 10 billion times, leaving him astonished. Jaehwan then shows him a paper, stating that it is a contract that they wrote before dueling, which instructed the loser to grant the wish of the winner. He then starts to read out the contract loudly to remind Chunjio of his promise, causing him to become frustrated. Considering that he will have to grant his wish, Chunjio asks if he is planning on using him as a slave, but Jaehwan disagrees. Jaehwan states that he only wants him to answer his questions honestly, to which Chunjio agrees. However, before that, Jaehwan states that they should go out and take a small walk. While they are walking around in the castle, Jae-hwan asks what the Master's Tower is. Chunjio reveals that the towers created by nightmares rank from F to S, and Master Craftsmen are those who manage to make the S rank as apprentices and become Master Craftsmen early on. Chunjio reveals that from among the towers created by the Masters, only the special ones related to cultivation can be called Master Towers. Hearing that, Jae-hwan asks why such towers are even created, and Chunjio replies that he is not sure about it, but he knows that the Awakeners who clear those towers keep appearing. In response, Jae-hwan asks if Chunjio is also from the Master's Tower, and he agrees, revealing that he came from Master Melville's fourth tower, known as Moby Dick. He remembers that it was like a calamity at that time, with many martial masters of the martial realm dying. He considers it a miracle for him to have cleared such a dangerous tower, sharing his belief that Jae-hwan also seems to be from the Master's Tower. Chunjio asks which tower he cleared, and Jae-hwan reveals it to be Molok's tower. Hearing that, Chunjio feels surprised, remarking that it is a difficult task to clear Molok's tower. In response, Jae-hwan asks if he knows Molok, and Chunjio agrees, revealing that he used to journey with him, leaving Jae-hwan surprised. To hear more, Jae-hwan asks if he has really traveled with Molok, and Chunjio states that it is a very long story, suggesting that they should take a walk outside. After that, they go outside the castle, walk in the streets, and have their dinner. Finding Claire selling food on the street because her pub was destroyed, Chunjio states that her stall is going to be an alfresco street stall for the time being. Looking at the summoning chamber in front of them, he states that this place is the one where souls that were worn out from the Almighty Land's war went for their sweet rest. He reveals that everyone was actually able to live a proper life after being released by them and started to value peace, throwing their weapons aside. While they are talking about that, they suddenly notice two people fighting behind them. However, considering them to be drunkards, Jae-hwan turns to the table and takes a sip of the drink but finds it tasteless. Just then, Chunjio reveals that they are not drunkards but are just acting like drunkards, and states that in chaos, one does not get old, hungry, or drunk. However, this was something that made humans want the opposite. He reveals that because they missed real life, which had depth, they began to act like they were living a real life in which they needed to eat to live. However, one day, drunkards who started to do new things appeared and gathered people to rediscover real life. These people started an expedition called the Abyss Expedition. Hearing that, Jae-hwan becomes surprised and asks why they were heading to the Abyss of all places. Chunjio reveals that they went there to look for the fruit of the resurrection accord. According to him, those are the fruits that hang on the branches of the illusion tree at the end of the abyss. Jae-hwan asks if a dead person can really be revived, and Chunjio agrees, saying that the only way that the dead can come back alive is by eating the fruit of resurrection. He reveals that the Abyss Expedition was an alliance that was formed for the sake of finding that fruit. Chunjio reveals that it was the time when he had already awakened and was at the age where he was fearless. Hearing that, Jae-hwan asks if Molok was also a part of the expedition, and Chunjio agrees, revealing that he was the captain who led the expedition and was a very unique individual. He remembers that during the expedition, Molok came to him and stated that he had achieved an incomplete awakening without abandoning his emotions, which is very unique. Molok remarked that it must be tough on him, while Chunjio simply told him to talk later, causing Molok to ask if he was upset because of cultivation. Frustrated, Chunjio threw his sword towards Molok, but he dodged it. Turning towards him, Chunjio asked why someone like him was going to the abyss while they usually sat in the rooms and created towers. In response, Molok stated that he does not have anything to say regarding that, and it would be useless even if he apologized to him on behalf of all the mayors. The realization that mayors regretted making towers exist left him utterly shocked. With a sword in his hand, Molok stated that even if Chunjio believes him or not, the reason for his going to the illusion tree and the abyss is the tower that ends all cultivation. After that, he walked towards Chunjio and returned the sword to him, stating that this is the reason why he is a part of the expedition. Surprised to hear all that, Jae-hwan asks if the expedition was successful, and Chunjio reveals that he was only able to reach the entrance because he fell behind on the way. However, he shares his belief that Molok succeeded in reaching the top of the illusion tree because the fruits of resurrection began to drop from the branches. He reveals that all the members of the expedition took a lot of fruits with them to chaos. Hearing which, Jae-hwan wonders why Chunjio is still in chaos. Just then, Claire comes to their table, telling Chunjio to correct his facts and revealing that the expedition was a failure. But Chunjio disagrees with that. She tells Jaehwan that the expedition only succeeded until the part about obtaining the fruits. Recalling that, Chunjio reveals that when they were coming back to chaos, the monarchs and patriarchs of the Almighty Land attacked them because they did not have the courage to go back to the abyss. They chose to fight with the 4 fortress masters, and the 10 faction leaders who were part of the expedition were no match for them due to this overwhelming difference in power. Chunjio reveals that the fruit of resurrection was stolen from them. He states that those monarchs still use the fruits they stole from them to revive themselves each time they die, and they have been doing that for the past 900 years. He also tells Jaehwan about the resurrection palace where the monarchs take turns reviving when they die, following the order that was decided from the start. Hearing that, Jaehwan realizes that the people of chaos are so lethargic because they know that the fruit of resurrection is something they will never be able to obtain. Reminiscing about Moloch, Jaehwan turns to Chunjio to ask him something but finds him asleep. Turning to him, Claire states that it is useless because he is really drunk after acting drunk for 1,000 years. She reveals that, according to what she heard, Moloch was never seen by anyone again after the expedition ended. Just then, James comes to them, thanking Jaehwan and stating that it is only because of him that their captain has survived. Looking at Jaehwan's expression, James asks if he has forgotten about him already. He states that in the future, whenever Jaehwan enters Gorgon, he should come in through the north gate since they know his face and will not check his identification, telling him to keep it a secret from their captain. James starts to walk away while Jaehwan looks at him from behind. Soon after he leaves, someone else comes running from behind, calling out to him. Jaehwan turns to him, recognizing him to be Jaeher, who informs him that they are in big trouble. As they run towards the palace, they find dark and malevolent energy surrounding the palace, making them think that the fortress master is indeed dead. Jaehwan thinks that the spiritual pressure is 10 times greater than what he felt from the dead in the day. He remembers Jürgen saying that they would not ask him for his identity or to compensate for the damages caused by him but simply requested that he saved their fortress master. Remembering that, he turns to Jaeher, remarking that their master is undergoing beatification, and he agrees, stating that he suddenly went berserk, which is normal once a week, but not that day. Jaeher reveals that the fortress master is a very good person in reality, and before his beatification began, he was a living legend. He states that the fortress master was among the few people who went on the Abyss expedition with the divine physician, leaving Jaehwan surprised. To hear more, Jaehwan asks if he can perform the dead slash. In response, Jaeher tells him to do it in the physician's stead because of Chunjio's drunken state, but he refuses. Jaehwan states that he simply imitated the physician at the time and is not as good as Chunjio, and it might be a different case if he had learned from him. Soon after they reach the castle, they find it shaking badly and engulfed by a fierce storm, making Jaeher wonder if the fortress master is all right. Facing the severe storm, Jaeher suddenly looks up and finds the destruction and despair of the tower captain in front of them. Using his skill of comprehension, Jaehwan finds that they are actually looking for him. While Jaeher tells them to get aside, stating that it is urgent, they refuse to do it, and he inquires if they are intending to go against the wishes of the heavens. Hearing that, they start to laugh and state that the only heaven they have is the forbidden heaven. They leap up in the air to launch an attack, making Jaeher surprised at their fast move. Considering that they might harm Jaehwan, Jaeher tells him to quickly move away while they come down and launch an attack, causing the ground to get destroyed. As the clouds of dust clear, Jaeher appears from within, having blocked the attacks of both of them, which makes Jaehwan surprised at his power. Jaeher states that he did not expect the people of the Forbidden Heaven clan to be present in the castle and asks if they have forgotten who he is, stating that he pushes them with all his might, causing them to go flying backward. Doing that, Jaeher warns them to think carefully and go back, stating that if they follow, the fortress master might forgive them. Landing on the ground, one of them asks if he is talking about the creature that is bound underground. They remark that the fortress master cannot even control his own strength or distinguish between good and evil. They ask if Jaeher is still serving that person despite being aware of his condition. Jaeher responds with a firm belief in the fortress master's eventual recovery. Suddenly, the other captain swiftly approaches Jaehaer from behind to launch an attack, asserting that conversations are ineffective. Hearing that, Jaehaer quickly turns around, but before he can react, the attacker strikes in with a weapon, sending him crashing to the ground. Looking down at him, they comment that if he had been a little smarter, they would not have needed to fight with him like that. Lying on the ground, Jaehaer contemplates how these Stage 4 adapters are able to contend with a Stage 5 adapter like himself, struggling to understand how they are doing it. Considering that he cannot estimate their speed and strength, Jaehaer realizes that this is not normal and thinks that something dangerous is happening. While he is pondering about that, Jaehwan arrives on the scene and tosses Chunjio onto Jaehaer's face, instructing him to escape as a form of punishment for Jaehaer pushing him earlier. Looking at him, the two captains ask if he is the person who can perform a dead slash, prompting him to ask what they will do if he is the one. Using his comprehension skills, he deduces that they think of him as a non-adapter who has a powerful weapon and consider him too weak to even launch a powerful punch. Suddenly, Jaehwan maneuvers behind them and delivers a forceful punch to one of the captains, causing him to collide with the wall, and asks if they are talking about that kind of punch. Seeing that the other one held his weapon to fight against Jaehwan, looking at him, Jaehwan states that they have too many openings to call this act a defense and launches a powerful punch in his face. In response, the captain swings his spear-like weapon, causing the ground to crack, and then executes an upward circular motion that propels Jaehwan away, calling him a weak person. The captain rushes at him while Jaehwan realizes that his energy is growing stronger and stronger with time. While Jaehwan wonders what kind of energy this is, the person asks if he thinks someone like him can save the fortress master, even if he is able to get to him. Realizing that his energy is based on the technique of fear, Jaehwan considers it ridiculous that they are trying to betray others with that level of ability. Thinking that, Jaehwan states that he cannot save that fortress master since it is the duty of Chunjio. With that, he steps on the captain's spear and leaps up, making them confused. Coming down towards him, Jaehwan states that killing both of those traitors will be a different story. However, meanwhile, in the inner part of the fortress, the malice and energy of the dead start to spread around, becoming stronger with every passing moment. Seeing it, the officials of the castle feel anxious, stating that it has not even been a day since the dead slash was performed. Looking at the fortress master in a state of berserk, they wonder how his condition worsened like that. Yurin thinks that he saw with his own eyes that when the doctor came in the morning, the deatification calmed down. However, looking at his current condition, he wonders why he is suddenly rampaging again at a time when they started getting hopeful for his recovery. Thinking about his treatment, Yurin remembers Chunjio saying that Jaehwan's dead slash is merely an imitation at the moment and it would take him a long time for it to become worth trying. Remembering that they had very high hopes for Jaehwan, Yurin looks at the people standing behind him and thinks that one of them must know where Jaehwan is. He thinks that he was already aware of a traitor being present among them and remembers his conversation with the fortress master regarding this issue. During their conversation, the fortress master stated that he would go and deal with the issue of spiritual corruption by himself, which made him feel worried. Thinking that it was very dangerous, Yurin suggested that he sent a captain or a minister instead. But the fortress master remarked that Yurin does not have any faith in him. The fortress master stated that he has lived through a dangerous war and that despite getting defeated, he will continue to work for the well-being of his people. However, when he went to complete this mission, he got spiritually corrupted himself. Remembering the people who went with him on that mission, he looks at Mayhan, wondering if he could be the one responsible for that. While Mayhan orders the guards to take their positions, hearing that, Yurin turns to him, stating that they should not enter before the doctor arrives. But he argues that if they delay further, it will be the end of Gorgon. Stating that they cannot perform the dead slash without the doctor, Yurin asks if he is planning on killing the fortress master. In response, Mayan states that they cannot defeat the fortress master even if they all charge at him at once. Therefore, he reveals that he is going to perform a dead seal, prompting Yurin's hand to argue that it is their final option. However, Mayan states that it will be too late if they wait anymore and they need to at least preserve the fortress master's spiritual energy through that technique. In response, Yurin states that they do not have a specter crystal to do that, but Mayan says that there is no need to hide it since everyone knows already. Just then, the Dark Shadow Captain appears from behind holding a box, making Yurin realize that he is actually a traitor. Looking at the box, he thinks that it must be holding the specter crystal that Jae-hwan had, stating that it involves the future of Gorgon. Mayhem asks why he is hiding and monopolizing such an important item, while Yurin remains silent. Mayan states that he is aware of the consequences of the Fortress Master transforming into a real dead, with suspicion in his eyes. Mayhem asks if Yurin was actually planning to turn the Fortress Master into a strong monster, remembering how dangerous it is. Mayan states that he has seen with his own eyes how much of a threat just a medium-sized dead monster was to Gorgon. He states that mega dead monsters are a calamity that commands countless deaths and brings ruination everywhere they sweep through, asking if Yurin really wants to see that happen. Considering that the Fortress Master is in a very critical state and the doctor is not there, Yurin thinks that Mayhan's current opinions are valid. However, he states that a dead seal is not something that anyone with a specter crystal can do, since it's a secret technique of the Green Purist clan, and asks how he will bring them here. In response, Mayan states that he should not worry and reveals that he has already called people who have learned that secret technique. Just then, a few people with their faces covered enter the area, while Mayan states that they are not from the Green Purist clan but are capable of performing the seal. Looking at them, Yurin thinks that this is not good at all, since performing a seal like that would put all of the Castellan's spiritual energy into the specter crystal. After that, if someone came into possession of the specter crystal with his spiritual energy, they would be able to inherit that energy and become the master of Gorgon. He knows that if Gorgon falls into the wrong hands, it will be destroyed. Just then, he notices one of the people taking out the crystal from the box and becomes surprised, considering that there is someone who can hold the specter crystal without being a Green Purist. Remembering the words of the Castellan about people who can manipulate spiritual corruption, Yurin becomes shocked, realizing that these are the people the Fortress Master was referring to. He realizes that everything from the Castellan getting spiritually corrupted to his current state was part of Mayhan's plan. Having found it out, Yurin commands all the subordinates to stop Mayhan, but to his surprise, they refuse to follow, making him realize that they were all involved in that plan. Realizing that there is nothing he can do, Yurin apologizes to the Castellan, while the traitors initiate the dead seal. Remembering the Fortress Master, Yurin thinks that because of his complacency, he was unable to protect Gorgon. While he is thinking that, tears begin to fall from his eyes and he feels powerless to do anything, and sits on the ground, lowering his head. Just then, the roof of the interior chamber breaks, making them all shocked, and a sudden wind begins to blow. While they all look up in confusion, Jae-hwan suddenly appears, accompanied by Jaehae, making them all surprised. Looking at him, Mayhem asks who he is and how he came there. In response, Jaehae tells him to keep quiet and tosses the two captains they fought with in front of him, stating that his people have already told them about all this traitorous acts. Upon hearing this revelation, Mayan gazes at the fallen captain who offers an apology before taking his own life. Jaehae expresses astonishment at Mayhem's apparent lack of control over the situation. In response, Mayan explains that the captains had pledged to commit suicide upon exposure, absolving him of responsibility. Hearing that, Jaehae tells everyone to get ready for the battle, stating that this is a rebellion. However, to his shock, instead of catching Mayhan, all of them point their swords towards Jaehae and apologize to him for doing that. They tell him not to go against the will of the Forbidden Heaven clan and state that they will need him to stay like that until the seal is completed. Looking at all the situations, Jae-hwan turns to Yurin, stating that he promised him to provide protection if he treated the Fortress Master, but arguing that Gorgon does not seem to be in the state of providing him protection. Therefore, he states that they should change the contents of the promise, making Yurin confused. Jae-hwan states that he will save the Fortress Master and kill all the traitors, but in return, he wants to have Chunjio and set up the Abyss expedition again. He states that he wants them to help him with that. Hearing that, Yurin remarks that it is nonsense. Just then, Mayhan chimes in and states that he has already heard the story about the person who was able to kill Janaya in a single strike, and has come to realize that it is indeed true. In that case, Mayan states that they will also use all of their power. In response, Jae-hwan pulls out his sword and stands in between countless enemies charging at him from all directions, with fierce intent in his eyes. He leaps up and starts to kill them one by one at a very fast speed, making Mayhan shocked. Realizing that they are coming at him endlessly, he stands still for a moment and takes a deep sigh. After that, he strikes his sword on the ground and uses the normal thrust, directing it towards them. As the thrust hits him, Mayhem realizes that it is impossible for him to block such a powerful attack and drifts away. However, as soon as he gets away to save himself from the attack, the energy collides with the chains holding the fortress master, causing them to break. Looking at the big hole formed in the wall behind the fortress, Mayan becomes shocked, thinking that if he had not gotten away, he would have died by this attack. Meanwhile, Jaehaer and Yurin, who are standing at a distance, feel surprised at Jaewon's incredible destructive power. Using the comprehending skill, simultaneously, Jaewon grasps that the traitor's initial plan of utilizing the Dead Seal has failed, prompting them to resort to a plan B. Soon after, he comes to know that their next plan is to use the Black Cloud, regardless of how much destruction it spreads in Gorgon, which makes him feel shocked. Turning to Mayhem, who sits on the ground, badly injured, Jaehwan states that he is the outer administrator of the fortress and the first elder of the Forbidden Heavens clan. Jaehwan states that although he is not aware of their purpose in corrupting the souls of others, he admires people like them, saying that he moves away while Mayhem orders his people to attack him and take him down no matter what. Complying, the entire army of traitors starts to rush towards him while he stands still, holding his sword, stating that he likes such people because they make it easy for him to destroy this world. With that, he unleashes a powerful slash that pierces through the castle, reaching skyward like a comet, then brilliantly illuminates the heavens like a firework. While they all look at the sky with surprise, Yurin thinks of it as a sign of overwhelming hope. He remembers the fortress master stating that the people of chaos need an overwhelming hope that does not falter in the face of anything. Meanwhile, the overwhelming energy that touched the sky starts to rain down upon the traitors, causing them to die and spreading massive destruction. Turning to Jaehaer, Jaehwan asks if Chunjio is still sleeping, and he replies that he is not waking up no matter how hard he tries. Hearing that, Jaehwan takes him from them and crashes him onto the wall, shocking them with the impact of the collision. Chunjio finally wakes up, feeling a lot of pain in his back. While Jaehwan states that he should have woken up by himself, just then, the condition of the fortress master begins to deteriorate, and they get a warning that his spiritual corruption has reached up to 99.9%, and the process of deadification has started. Don't forget to subscribe and like the video. Thanks for watching, the Baka Senpai.